I'm doing an interview with Mr. Dean Smith, a former slave, became free, and then fighting for the North during the Civil War. How are you doing, Mr. Dean Smith? I'm doing well. How are you? I'm doing fantastic. I see that you've written a book about your life as being a slave and also being part of the North Infantry. And I see that you've been through a lot through them times. And you have been a slave of 3 different slave masters in 3 different parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and Delaware. Yes, I have. Now, you say you've been a slave ever since you were 10 years old. Now, was you brought here from Africa? No. I was born in the Caribbean. And once my parents were slaves during that time in Jamaica, they had a slave ship come down there and they needed slaves, young boys that were healthy and had strength. So at the time, I was doing housework for the slave master down there. So they had over 200 slaves, my slave master. And so he told, yes, I have a couple of boys that could be taken for you to be used. And I was one of the chosen one because I used to do the work so good that, that they used to give me a lot of respect. Even the slave watchers used to give me so much respect. But I didn't know why they gave me away, but I didn't understand at the time, so I was just doing what my slave master told me. So once you got onto this ship, was it the ship just like how they had you over there, your family, when they came from Africa, and they had you underneath the boat? No, this was a different type of slave ship. We were on top of the boat, but we were still chained up. Don't get me wrong. So we won't escape or jump into the ocean, because most of them just wanted to die. Because they knew their lives was going to change once they get to Americas. Me, I was one of them kids that was very arrogant. I thought I could conquer the world. And thought I'd do everything. Thought I could do everything. Until I got to America. Now we docked up there in New Jersey. And I was going to be taken to Philadelphia. From Philadelphia, I'll be taken to Delaware. And that's where my slave master was. And from Delaware, I was in North Carolina. From North Carolina, I was up there in Virginia. And that's where I settled. But I escaped. And then I ended up in the North. So, won't you tell me a little bit about how you started from Delaware? Well, once we came from Jersey, Philly, into Delaware, because it was just horrible. They treated us like shit. Beat us, spit on us. They called us all types of names. Nigger, monkey, ape, everything. It was a horrible time, but I was so used to it that I just ignored it. But the feeling of anger inside me just wanted to explode. I wanted to do things to them, but I knew that I couldn't win. I couldn't even fight back. So I just followed my directions that they told me. So we get to the plantation. The plantation is huge. It was about over 150 slaves. Most of them were just old. A lot of them were illiterate. And some only knew a few words. I'd never seen so many children. And some of the slave watchers were beating, cussing. They were working their bones off like it was so horrible. But when I got there, I started off in the house. I was so good, I ended up in the yard. And I was so good in the yard, I ended up going to the stores to buy the slave master rice, corn, flour, butter. They trusted me to go by myself. So I was traded off because the slave master ended up dying. So I was traded off to a family in North Carolina. That was a short stint because they thought I was having relations with the daughter. Instead of killing me, they traded me off to Virginia. I was there for about 10 years. A horrible, horrible time for me. Seen so many of my people die. I was even beaten a couple of times. Sir, if you want to stop this interview, we can. No, don't want to stop the interview. So, I had to figure out a way to get out of there. I had to escape. I had to get out. I was a little bit educated. I knew how to read. I knew how to write a little bit. And I learned how to study maps. And I was so used to being in the area of all the woods and places that I started to map out areas that I know I could hide and escape. I knew it was going to be a long journey. So I started talking to one of the people that were enslaved, and he was telling me that I'm going to be a fool to leave. Why would you leave all this? They feed us, they clothe us, they make sure that we're safe. And I slapped him in his face. I said, do you understand? They're killing us. They're beating us. They're raping us. They're maiming us. Are you seeing these things? And I thought he was going to tell the slave master, but he never did. But he looked at me kind of evil. And I made my plans to get out of there. It took me almost a year to make my plan final. I had no help. I did it all by myself. So what did you do to escape? How did you escape the plantation without being caught by slave watchers? I did it at night, around 3 in the morning, where it was really when everybody was asleep, and the slave watchers were coming out one by one to check on the slaves. I put like bags of flour on my bed to pretend that I was still sleeping in my bed. Because the slave watchers did not come all the way into the house, they stood at the door. And if they see that you were sleeping, they would walk out. They wouldn't check on you. So I figured that gave me enough time to run further away from the plantation. And once I got an hour away from the plantation, that's when they sent the dogs. That's when they sent the slave catchers. They had a reward out for me for $500 to find me, dead or alive. And I was hiding everywhere. Being on the run as a slave It's like you're in a game of you're running from the devil to try to catch you to take your soul. I heard the dogs, I heard the horses, I heard the slave catches. I heard that they're going to kill me. They're going to hang me and shoot me. They're going to drag me by the horses. They're going to take 2 horses and time. They're going to take 4 horses and tie each of my body limbs up and rip my body limbs apart. They were going to set me on fire. They're going to chop me up in little pieces and feed them to their dogs. I heard it all. So I ran deeper into the forest. I hid in caves. I hid in trees. I climbed trees and I was hiding in the trees. It was cold. I was hungry. I was thirsty. I ate anything. Dead animals. Fish, raw. I drank from lakes, rivers, ravines. I was dirty. I was sweaty. It smelled bad. But I kept moving. My feet were scarred. I had sores all on my body. Had gotten a cold. I was so sick. I was throwing up from stomach pains from eating the raw fish and drinking the dirty water. I kept pushing. Every time I heard a dog, or every time I heard a white man's voice or a little kid's voice, I would jump up. I couldn't sleep. I didn't even get any sleep. I just kept waiting till the sun to set so I could run in darkness. So I could follow the stars in the moon. Because I knew how to map out where I was, because I was really good at reading maps. I got to a field. This field that was emptied. I was so afraid to run in the field because I thought that they would catch me. So I got on my stomach, and this field had to be at least a mile long, of no trees, no high grass, just the sun beaming down, and there were farms like around this massive field, and there were people out there. There were white people, farmers, and also some slaves. I got down on my stomach and I crawled my way across the open field. It took me hours to get to the cornfield. And once I got to the cornfield, I took some corn from off the corn holders and I just ran. Every time I felt like somebody was watching me or somebody was following me or chasing me. So everything was a panic for me. I thought I was going to die. I was running and I fell down this ditch and I broke my ankle. And I got this stick and I have that stick still to this day. I used the stick to help me walk or limp my way another 300 miles. I try to avoid roads. I try to avoid villages. I try to avoid people, even if they were black. I will avoid them because I did not trust no one. I ate from berries that were in trees. I ate plants. I ate anything I could because I was starving. I was skinny. I was unnourished, and I cried every night and every day. And I said, God, if you are real, let me get across to the north. And I promise you I will redeem my family. I got to this church. I didn't care anymore if I got caught. I banged on the church's door. A priest came out, grabbed me, took me in, gave me water, gave me bread. He gave me a blanket. And he let me down into a basement full of all these other African free slaves. And I'm thinking, no, I'm going to be taken back to the plantation. The priest looked at me and told me, you're in the north. Now, you're free. Lay here and rest. Other free slaves came up to me and they circled me and they held me and they talked to me and we all cried. Oh, wow. That was an experience for you. So tell me about you being in the military of the North. After I was given work and I started saving up to buy my own land, I met my wife. She was at the church and me and her got acquainted and we fell in love and we had a child. Abraham Lincoln read his speech about trying to free slaves. And he spoke again about war and drafting. I didn't get drafted. I wanted to fight the South. So I joined the North. So, Mr. Smith, did you fight? Yes, I did. How many whites did you kill? 20 of them. All hand-to-hand combat. In the rain, in the mud. How did you feel? I never felt any better or any worse. Me killing a white man didn't prove anything or do anything to free my people or change the fact that my people were in bondage for 150 years. It doesn't change the fact that most of my family died in bondage. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother, all dead. They'll never get the chance to taste freedom, but they'll taste it through me. I became educated. I came in history and historian. I own property in many parts of the country. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a teacher. I try to teach my African people about survival. Because we are still slaves. We still are not respected or even given a chance to taste the fruits of our labor. To be a free man is not enough. I've been through so much hell trying to be free than being a slave. But it was worth the hell to get to heaven. Mr. Smith, have you learned anything about the time, or do you feel that slavery was just? I'm not going to say slavery is just to no one, because no one should be a slave. We live on this earth. We should live on this earth for free. Everything that we have, if God gave us all these things, why do we have to pay for the things that God gave us? If they believe there's a God, what is your things on Christianity? I do not want to speak of Christianity, because Christianity put my ancestors in slave chains, and it brainwashed my ancestors to believe that a white God is someone that told his followers that slavery is just. And to use the Bible as a tool to enslave and to conquer people and countries. Why is that used for that purpose? And I say to the future next of kin, we need to stay together. We cannot separate. We were separated in slavery. We can't be separated in freedom. We have a long way to go. Mr. Smith, you were a great interview. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about what you have been through. Thank you very much for having me.